First of all, those of you who are watching the live stream on Facebook or YouTube, if you have a question, hold on to your questions, okay? Go ahead and type them in and continue watching the presentation. We'll have question and answer session after the main presentation has completed. We'll take a very short break, and then we'll show you the coming up events. After that, we'll take the questions. The presenter will take your questions, anything that's related to his presentation. Anything that's unrelated, bullying or harassment, we will ask you to leave Facebook for bullying or harassment, or we will ignore any comments that do not pertain to the discussion. We have an interpreter here who's voicing or signing, depending on the audience. We will have a presenter and a moderator. I hope you had a great summer and enjoy watching the presentation. Now I'll turn it over to Dr. Marla Hattrack. She'll be our moderator. Hello, everybody. Welcome to CAD's platform called Connecting to CAD. This is our 6th webinar. The CAD platform is to bring the community together. Tonight, we're fortunate to have David Longo. He's the principal of University High School, which is a high school in Orange County. Tonight, his presentation is called Whole Child Development: The Fight for Least Restrictive Environment, LRE. Please join me in welcoming David here tonight. Oh, before I turn it over to David, at the end of his 30-minute presentation, we will have a quick break to advertise upcoming events, and then I will come back in to offer the questions so that David can answer them. Okay, I'll turn it over to David. Good luck. Thank you, Dr. Hattrack, for that introduction. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. As Dr. Hattrack mentioned, my title, Whole Child Development: The Fight for LRE. This is a topic that I've really been talking and presenting on for about 2 years now. I'm very passionate about it. I focused a lot of my professional and personal work on this issue. When school started, right, I had to stop thinking about, I wanted to think about how to support deaf students and what we do to support students' development, not just academic development, but social development as well. LRE is, I think it's a huge issue. I think it's a justice issue in this field. I want to start the dialogue about how using this LRE can galvanize us in our work together. uh, in order to focus on students' needs. All right. So this slide, for those of you who know or don't know, it's from a movie. The movie's called The Silent Child. It won Oscars in 2017. And this specific actor is a deaf girl, Maisie Sly. The reason I put this is I think it helps you to understand why this issue is so important to me. I would like to give you a little bit of personal background. As Marla mentioned, I am a principal of a school in Orange County for a regional program. Our school has grades 6 up, so we're middle school as well as university high school. Now, I was a psychologist for 18 years before I became a principal. Before that, my involvement is because my younger brother is deaf. So I've been involved in many aspects of his learning and seen what he went through in school. We're 2 years apart. He's 3 years younger than me. So we're 3 years apart. And we've always been close. And he started out in an oral education program, an oral school. That's what my parents first chose. And he struggled. My brother and I developed our own home sign. We were always close, so we always figured out a way to communicate with each other. Part of that included because I was the one who was able to communicate better with him, a lot of his communication went through me. After several years of going through an oral education, my parents decided to move him. At that time, there was an elementary school with about, David, was that 3 or 4 or 34? 3 or 4 other deaf students at that school. And he struggled. My mom decided to send me to go to the classroom and observe what was going on. At that point, I was 12 years old. I sat in his class and watched, saw what was going on in his school, but what really hit me at the time was that at recess, when all of the kids went out to play, my brother went and stood near the wall. He just stood there. He didn't move. He just went and stood next to the wall. And when I saw that, it really hit me. It had a huge impact on me. Of course, I was there, so I went and hung out with him, but to just watch that and see him be at that school with such limited interaction and standing next to the wall during recess, I couldn't believe it. I wasn't sure at the time that that was a really common experience until I saw this movie. And this movie is about a young girl. Maybe she's 5 or possibly preschool or kindergarten age. And her family hires a nanny, a woman who happens to know sign language, and starts to teach the girl, the character in the movie, sign language. Prior to that, the girl had lots of behavior problems and tantrums. Then the behavior problems started to improve, and her demeanor, her outlook, her behavior started to improve as she started to learn sign language. But the parents decided to stop or to fire the nanny. At the end, they place the, the girl into a school. And this is the final scene in the movie. All the kids are outside playing, and they just leave her, and she's there standing by the wall. It really got me. It reminded me that this experience it happens often. It happens much more often than we realize. And that motivated me to get to work. So that story, my background is a lot, it has a lot to do with why I do what I do. Let's go to the next slide. I really appreciate this quote. Language impacts everything we do. When you talk about whole child development, we have to think about language. Language impacts every single aspect. And clearly, that has a lot to do with LRE. This is very related to executive function. Executive function controls all aspects of our thinking, of our socialization, interactions with others. It's a lifelong attribute. This slide shows some of the examples of memory issues and social issues, not just among school-aged children, but adults. These are all the things that are impacted by language deprivation and language delays. Okay. So what is least restrictive environment, or LRE? This is the legal definition from IDEA. The emphasis on making sure that any special ed student and then I bolded certain part of this, right, are educated with children who are not disabled. They are in as many regular classes as possible. With quote unquote similar aged child peers. I pulled this part out because I really want to emphasize this. This particular wording is from an IEP form. When discussing LRE in an IEP, you have to justify a placement by explaining all potential harmful effects. Any harmful effects means anytime the student is not in their home school or outside of general ed classrooms, you have to document and justify the placement. To me, anytime that a student is outside of the regular classroom, they're already outside of the intent of LRE. The law really emphasizes having students in the general ed classroom at least 80% of the time. When they're not, you have to justify why. Why aren't students in the general ed classroom? I want to show this to you. Whoa, what just happened there? Okay, sorry about that. The reason that I wanted to show that to you is so that you know that there's a automatically kind of like a negative connotation, or as soon as you want to take a student into a place where they're not with these mainstream hearing peers. LRE is defined here in this slide. So I included this. This is from NAD, the National Association of the Deaf, from 2002. And they describe what LRE should mean for deaf and hard of hearing students. And I'm not going to go through everything, but you can see it focuses on language development, on academic, social, emotional development, on ESL, on placement should be based on language abilities and needs to provide a sufficient number of age-appropriate and peers who are at the same level. The concept, one of the concepts is called critical mass, and I will go into more detail about that in a moment. At the end, it talks about role models, which I think is really important. when you are advocating for LRE in an IEP, they need to be interacting with other people who use their language. It's really important that they interact, that they have individuals that they can look up to. Unfortunately, like our program starts at 6th grade, some students arrive to 6th grade getting ready for middle school, and they've never met a deaf person in their entire lives. It's unfortunate. One part I wanted to emphasize is the quote at the top. Their interpretation of LRE is a language-rich environment. Now remember, NAD put this out 20 years ago. I remember hearing about this. I think I had been a psychologist, and I thought, cool, this is such a great idea. But unfortunately, it doesn't emphasize which language. For those of us who are proponents of American Sign Language, sometimes this language-rich environment has been used against us, where language-rich to others means English and not ASL. It's something we really need to talk about. We need to get the word out about the benefits of ASL in academic settings and in education. Maybe you're all aware of this bill, the Deaf Children's Bill of Rights from 1994. It was passed almost 30 years ago. We are still today fighting for this issue. Again, everything basically is in there. Make sure the students have role models, have teachers and peers who they can communicate with directly. It's meeting their way of learning. Again, this was passed almost 30 years ago. It's amazing how many people still don't know that this is alive. Now, related to the topic of critical mass, there was a legislative analysis from 2016. It looked at the importance of regional programs. Now, this is some information on this slide has some information that was gleaned from that report. That report heavily recommended regional programs for deaf and hard of hearing students, with the recognition that it's difficult for deaf and hard of hearing students often to communicate with hearing peers, and that deaf and hard of hearing students in most hearing environments can become isolated. Now, placement decisions should be made based on students being able to interact with their peers. This is a little bit more about critical mass. The report that I referred to, the legislative analysis that I referred to, they describe critical mass as between 3 to 20 peers. I'm a little concerned that they would say that 3 could be a critical mass, but that was the minimum. I think that's something that we as a group and as a field need to redefine. But as of 5 years ago, there were only 5 programs and an average of 20 per grade. You can see the bullets, the rationale for regionalized programs. This information is from the report. It's not many people use this information to justify and validate the need for regionalized programs. I guess we've spent on this a lot of time on this. Maybe we should move on. But I do want to discuss the next slide, please. These are factors that are currently influencing the LEAs, local education agencies. I recently gave a presentation at CEASD with Jeff Bravin, the president of the American School for the Deaf. He did research on LREs as well. So some of this information is a joint effort between the two of us. But some of the items on this list are different factors that impact decisions that are made by IEP teams. It talks about limited experience, limited support. Many administrators who are making decisions, they're trying to figure it out while they're on the job. The team, you can see the third bullet there. This actually relates to several things. So sometimes the individuals on the team, we wonder, can they be objective? Can they really look at and review individual students' needs? This is where the vote that we just had at the Board of Education, I'm curious to see the ripple effects of that, because that vote encourages the team to avoid the concept of predetermination. So these are some factors that we have that you can take a look at. Let's go ahead. These are actual quotes These are things that I have heard people say from district representatives in IEP meetings here. I didn't come up with these, I'm telling you. So you can see they talk about sign language as a gesture system. One representative was like, deaf people can drive? When making a call, sometimes during a meeting, on a video phone or video through video relay, they're like, you're calling from a TTY? When was the last time, you actually saw a telephone receiver placed on a TTY? These are quotes from people who are making decisions about deaf and hard of hearing kids and their education. One thing I wanted to add is just this morning, I was in a district meeting. One of the representatives on the team was comparing ASL and saying it's the same as AAC. Automated communicative assistance. It's vastly different. Alternative AAC. Alternative augmentative communication. Thanks, Darren. Augmentative, yeah. Alternative augmentative communication. It's very different. American sign language is nothing like that. There are a couple other stories that I want to share with you that were really shocking to me. Some of the other comments that I have overheard. There's some background about this. Now, there was a family that visited our middle school program. A young student had gone through elementary school and oral programs, but her hearing got worse, and her parents wanted to start teaching their daughter ASL. They asked the district to place their daughter at Venado. This was the response from the district. It was from a letter sent to the family. And the bolded part was the most shocking. They didn't want to place this girl at Venado Middle School because 2 of the 3 teachers are deaf. Regardless of the fact that this is blatant discrimination, right? I was at a loss. Unfortunately, the family decided to go along with it. They ended up, rather than fight, they actually ended up leaving the state completely. That was an interpreter error. The family decided to go along with it. They did not. They chose to leave the district. There's another situation. I'll try. I know I'm running out of time, but I'll try to be brief. We got a referral from a student who was in 8th grade. The student was referred to our school because of behavioral problems that had actually involved the police. This is another student who'd always been in oral programs and was reading at a high 1st grade level. They brought up the option. Again, the district invited me to go to the IEP. When the option came up and we were discussing the idea of the student going to Venado, one teacher replied with this comment. Normally, I present this in a room full of people, and you can hear like the air gets sucked out of people. When we say this, teaching them sign would be criminal. It's shocking. You can just hear people gasp. I wanted to share these real life situations and tell you what kinds of things that I hear. This is going on out there. These are the kinds of issues that we're coming up against. So in summary, my hope, my reason, my dream, the whole reason I'm here that's me. Thank you all for your time this evening. I appreciate you being here. I look forward to your questions after a short break. Thank you. Well, that was a tearful kind of presentation. I keep thinking about my own dissertation. We need to talk after this. It's heartbreaking. We do have questions for you. First of all, I don't know how you can present this without getting really angry. I remember when I tried to here in San Diego County, reaching out about, I was trying to contact the 0 to 3 and 0 to 5 program directors and asking them who were their experts on deaf education. And they referred me to to North County. I was stunned. We really need to fix that. We have 4 questions so far. There might be some more that come in, but so far. Have you ever had a discussion with your brother about his experiences? Yes, we talk all the time. He still struggles. He will soon turn 50, and he still struggles. We talk about whole child development and the not just academic issues, but how it impacts people's lives in the long term. The impacts of language deprivation. To this day, the issue of socialization and access, working with people. He hated school. You know, even at that other program, that one that I told you about, he didn't stay there very long, and my parents decided that he needed to go somewhere else. They went to visit the American School for the Deaf. I'm from Connecticut, and I remember my brother's name is Paul. I remember my parents went to visit the American School for the Deaf. And the teacher said, you can't do that. You'll make him deaf. Marla says, you mean at American School for the Deaf? No, his teacher from the classroom where I saw him on the wall, his teacher at that school told my mom, you can't bring him to ASD. That'll make him deaf. Marla said, oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. At that point, he was almost 10. He missed out on so much. And by that time, he really had never made it up, even though he spent the rest of his time going to school and he learned a lot, and he's a computer genius. He can fix any computer problem. And there at ASD, he learned a lot. But still to this day, even though he's almost 50, he struggles with communication and interaction, his social interactions. My parents, well, they did the best that they could. At that time, with the information that they had, they made the best decisions that they could. I think it's the situation where many parents today still are saying, well, it's so dependent on the team. Who is advising you? Who is supporting you? Who is providing objective information so that parents can make knowledgeable, informed decisions? That's why I think that vote in Los Angeles, the Board of Education, I'm really hopeful, and I'm really looking forward to the ripple effects from that. It gave me hope, honestly. It gave me hope. We have an opportunity now, I think, to do something different. Marla said, I was in a meeting yesterday with a group of people. They asked me, what is a typical family experience when they give birth to a deaf child? And I said, they often go back a month later for the hearing test, and then they come back at 3 months later to diagnose, and then at 6 months, uh, that's when they start offering services. And I said, a lot of language happens in that first 6 months. Most of the time, parents would never know why their children don't have language skills when they enter kindergarten. They were led on a wild goose chase. We have a lot of work to do, but we will do it. We'll get there. Years ago, I think when they said that they didn't even diagnose a child as deaf until the age of 2. Now, with infant screening starting, they can identify deafness earlier. But we don't start to talk about language until much later. We don't start getting involved in language and seeing the impact of that until it's too late. Who is the person advising these parents? Yeah. Marla said, enough said. Enough said. I think you will enjoy my dissertation. Anyway, our next question. Does NAD still have this LRE text from the slide on their website today? Said, I believe it is up. The language-rich environment issue, that is still used today. And I still caution people, it's not about language, it's about ASL. So often people think that that means English. So it's not just English, it is ASL. It's a language-rich environment. They don't get it. So I do believe that information is available on NAD's website. Okay, the third question we have, do we still have time? What would be a good way to address all of these social justice issues? Can you discuss a way to address them all? I don't know. I'm going to throw out a bunch of stuff, and I know people are looking at this and saying, yes, this is a social justice issue. This is my soapbox. And just saying it over and over and over, preaching it. I preach it as often as I can. I think we need to make it a priority. I need organizations like CalEd, CAD, NAD, every organization to rally around this cause, to make LRE a priority, so that the whole team can make decisions based on that and can be more objective. I'm trying to rally the troops as much as I can. Marla said, I've had some discussions with people lately. People are looking for quick solutions. And they have marveled at my willingness to persist. I really do think we should get together and catch up, right? David said, I'd be happy to. The next question we have, what said, when you were there at that meeting, what did you do when the teacher said teaching him sign would be criminal? Well, I was mad. I said, you think we abuse our kids? That was my response. I had to say something. You know, the kid's father was there. I couldn't let that statement just linger. So that was my reply. The district administrator did apologize, but still, I feel like it's too late, you know, to even put that out there. And that student was 12 or 13 years old, and the parents had gone through that experience, you know, completely brainwashed up until that point about language for their son. If that student hadn't been involved with the police or hadn't gotten in trouble, we never would have gotten that referral. Marla said, that's interesting in itself, isn't it? That's a sad reality. But now that student is going to be a junior and will be getting their diploma. They're going to graduate university high school. It's a current university high school student. Marla said, oh, that's great. It makes me happy. It makes me cry. David said, me too. Me too. It makes me wonder if we shouldn't have some kind of interview with those kinds of students where, I don't know, I think it tells us so much. It says so much. That's all that I have. And I think if we're close to the end of time. So if we have any last minute questions, let us know. Or David, if you have any additional comments. For me, in thinking about what would be what would be the thing that could, what do you think could turn deaf education on its head? You know, what I would like to see is more regionalization. I think critical mass is really important. And the state of California is only there's only one of 5 programs that meet the criteria for what the state defines as having a critical mass. And it comes down to money. It comes down to funding and how money is allocated. Yeah. I would like to see low incidence funds used differently. Right now, low incidence funds are used for technology, and that's it. They're used for FM systems. They're used for batteries. They're used for all sorts of other technology. That's it. Why can't we use some of that money, allocate some of that for language, or to supplement regionalization decisions about placement? The district's like, well, it's very expensive. My program's too expensive. Why can't the state say, okay, we can use some of these funds to supplement, to support regionalization? I think that is how the state legislature allocates money. I think that's one thing we have to look at in order to do what you're saying. Organizations like CAD and NAD may be talking about how we can make better decisions with our financial resources. So CAD wrote the language policy report. They had 5 recommendations. The first one is to include ASL as part of the services provided. Recommendation number 2, professionally qualified deaf teachers should provide ASL services. 3, set up a statewide coaching program. 4th and 5th haven't been met yet, but we just sent a letter to our new director of SSDS, the state school, Dr. Slybach Amon, and asked them to consider restructuring deaf education under health services so that all the deaf and hard of hearing students from 0 to 22 would be put into one unit, only in one unit. And then 5th would be regionalized programs. Those are 2 tall orders, so we'll see what Dr. Slybach Amon says about that. So we definitely need your support. If there's anything I can do to support you, please let me know. I'd like to see you make progress. I thank the people watching our presentation tonight as well. Okay, so perfect. It is 6:58. Do you have any last words? I feel like I've said a lot. I think there's still a lot of work to do. I'm hoping that the people who've heard this discussion can continue with your passion and continue moving forward. There's a lot of work to do. Yes, indeed. I will be presenting my own dissertation research on October 8th. My dissertation really illuminates the issue of from birth, right? Where the problems start at birth, and then how far off track we get. Be on the lookout for an announcement about my dissertation presentation on October 8th. I think you will enjoy it. I think you'll enjoy it. Hope you're there. Okay, any last questions for David? All right. Well, you have no idea, really, that your presentation has really had an impact on me and the audience. I think it's a hard webinar to have online, but in speaking for myself, wow. You know, when we will look forward to the day when deaf children have what they need. We have to have hope. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming tonight, and you take care. Thank you as well. I appreciate it. Good night, everybody.